This is the Ripple Effect with your host, Carson Ripple, and I have a guest speaker today. His name is Joey Fanara. Joey, introduce yourself, please.
Hey, I'm Joey Fanara.
I thank you. Joey, I'd like to lead off with how do you feel about the Russian annexation of Crimea?
Carson, I really think that's kind of bad. You know, Ukraine has a lot of places, and Crimea is part of one of those places, and it's pretty bad that Russia took it because it was Ukraine's.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So, it's a big foreign policy problem with Russia just annexing a territory that it clearly does not own, under the pretenses that quote unquote rebels have started a revolution and taken back the area. And I personally believe that the sanctions that the U.S. and the majority of the Western world has put on Russia are perfectly understandable in this situation. It puts a lot of economic pressure on Russia, and it makes it to where they kind of have to like bow to the will of the West, right?
Hmm. Definitely.
So what?
So definitely.
Yeah. So beyond that, following a certain guide I have here, I'd like to analyze how the quote. It has been said that if we look at Russia as a democracy, it is a failure, but if we look at it as an emerging dictatorship, then it is a success. And I would just like to say that uh, that is very true, right, Joey? Would you agree?
I mean, yeah, pretty much. Putin's
Because
been there for the past, what, 12 years?
yeah, we have Medvedev and Putin, and they pretty much just flip roles all the time, and it makes it's essentially just Putin is the dictator of Russia under the guise of a democracy, and if I'm sure I can find the numbers, but they have near 100% voting rate or like voter participation, right?
Yeah.
And that's not very true, wouldn't you think?
Yeah,
Especially since any person that like says dissent or like makes moves against Putin ends up killing themselves by two shots to the back of the head. So whenever you have that, it's kind of difficult for anyone to run against you.
hmm. Well, I also know a lot of Russians are pretty like strong-willed, so it might take two shots to the back of the head. We don't know. It's it's Putin's could could just be on their own.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. I mean, it's not too hard to put a gun to the back of your head.
No.
It's a pretty simple process, especially like getting both shots in. I can definitely see that. Um, let's move on. To how about China? I've been asked to decipher
Hey, wake up.
the one China policy, in which I believe this is in the way China has essentially told the world that Taiwan, which it calls Taipei,
Oh
and
yes.
Hong Kong are part of it, but in reality, they exist as autonomous regions outside of like the majority of Chinese control. And wait, hold on. Let's see here. Yeah, and beyond that, we have Tibet too,
Hmm.
which isn't even close to being autonomous anymore. It's kind of ruled with an iron
Hey,
fist.
wake up.
And I personally am very against the Chinese occupation in Tibet, and personally feel like they shouldn't lay claim to both Taiwan. They shouldn't lay claim to Taiwan. Hong Kong, though, on the other hand, I feel like is kind of theirs in the sense that it was taken by like the
Yeah.
British
Yeah.
and just basically given them the middle finger and said, "This is ours. You can have the rest of China, but this one city is the British." And I personally feel like China can lay claim to Hong Kong without an issue. It's
I
whenever. Yeah, go ahead.
I was about to say I can agree with that to one like extent, but if you look at Hong Kong versus other Chinese cities, Hong Kong is just way ahead of everything. Hong Kong is a very uh it's just a great city in the middle of China, and it's doing a lot better just due
Yeah,
to all those other influences it's had in previous years.
Yeah, and that definitely is a part of the capitalist influence within the city, because for the longest time, while China suffered in essentially disrepair, throughout its emergence under Mao, um, with like the Great Leap Forward and the tens of millions of citizens that died due to starvation, Hong Kong was relatively untouched by that because it was protected by British influence and led primarily under capitalist influence. And this capitalist way of looking at capitalist way of running the country or that region has led to a lot greater prosperity, just really for the fact that it's existed under this regime longer, while most of China has only recently become capitalized. Like, it was only in the 80s and 90s that China started to abandon its communist policies and move towards capitalist approaches, which is that leads us to another topic. And would you think China is truly communist, Joey?
I would probably say no. I mean, the wealth divide is massive in China. You got either have, I guess that could be not communist, but I would also just say no, it's not communist. It's more of just a capitalistic country with a very strong central government that can really control over its people.
Yeah, I would agree. I feel like China is really only communist in name alone,
Mm.
because very little of what they accomplish as a country is communist oriented. Like, the majority of their reforms have made the country into a laissez-faire capitalist economy in which businesses have a ton of influence, and there's very little regulation to stop these businesses. There's a large state influence in, like, the government of the Chinese has played a large part in the formation of this economy, simply because they are attempting to be communist. But in reality, they exist as probably a more free capitalist market than the U.S. has, and it makes it kind of interesting whenever they call themselves the leading party. The one party is the Communist Party, and it's not necessarily even a communist country anymore. I personally feel like North Korea is the only somewhat communist part, like the only true attempt at communism left in the world, and even then, that's slowly going away too with reforms under Kim Jong Un.
Hmm.
But on the topic of North Korea, just recently we've found a lot more missile launches out of North Korea. How do you feel about that, Joey?
Uh, um, there's two standpoints I kind of feel about it. Is one, definitely a bad thing, considering that they want to exercise that they still have missiles and they want to get their whatever they want politically out of it. But two, it's also somewhat of a good thing because at least it will probably lead to some change that hasn't really happened in the past. I don't even know, like 50 or so years, and it's really just kind of a tragedy that's still going on over there. Whenever everybody knows about it for so long.
Yeah, I genuinely feel like once the walls fall down around North Korea, if they do, we are going to find things at the level of the Holocaust that we just don't know about. That
Hmm.
we have no way of seeing. Like, there is no way of telling how bad it is, because all we have is witness testimony, and the witnesses don't even necessarily see the worst of it. The reason they got out is because they didn't see the worst of it.
Hmm.
And I feel I can't imagine that Kim Jong Un, yes, he's very what appears to be emotionally unstable and mentally unstable to some degree, but I can't imagine them actually making a military action towards South Korea, Japan, or the U.S., because that's essentially a death sentence for the regime. And just looking at a New York Times article right now, like they just launched a missile, I believe yesterday or today, that has increased the range far past Japan and South Korea. And an aerospace engineer has estimated that it might even be able to hit Guam. These ballistic missiles that they've been testing, and that's worrisome. But also, I can't imagine that the North Korean regime would provoke a military response because I believe today, not even 5 hours ago, the UN Security Council condemned North Korea's missile program, like all of it. Like it was a unanimous condemnation, which means that China has essentially pulled back from North Korea, and that could lead to a lot. Like they can only flex their muscles so much, you know.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but hasn't China also like placed some sanctions on North Korea, or maybe removed some trade that they've had with them?
Yeah, China is slowly pulling back all of its support,
Hmm.
economically and politically in the UN, and it's really taking a toll on North Korea, as I understand it, because I mean the majority of all trade to North Korea comes from China,
Mm.
and any drop in that trade can can annihilate the already crippled economy of North Korea,
Mm.
and it's just kind of mind blowing to me that that there is still a country like this in the world, that there
It,
exists this without that we can't do anything about. Our hands are tied.
it's just kind of what happens after you have a country that's just been constantly only alive by having one country alive, and that was the Soviet Union. And whenever they collapsed, and then a couple years later, Kim Il Sung died, it's like been all downhill from there. They really haven't had anything to work with. They're growing opium instead of food for their people, just so they can sell it. So you're not in good shape when that's happening.
Yeah, and the thing that makes it the most sombering is the fact that the elite within North Korea live like kings,
Hmm.
as their population literally starves to death. Like in the thousands, they starve to death, and yet the Kims continue to be incredibly fat
Yeah.
and go to boarding school in Switzerland, while the rest of the populace cannot get electricity, running water, food. Like they lack the basic human rights we've all agreed upon as their regime takes it all. And it's just incredibly I hope that there will be some change in the region, but I don't know how that would come about.
Well, if there is any change that comes with it, it's probably going to come with a lot of military deaths, which is, I mean, I guess you can look in the next 50 years of it, if North Korea being alive, and you can wonder how many people are going to starve to death, or how many people are going to die in concentration camps there. Or you can look at, I guess, like a war and see how many people would die due to a, I guess it would basically be um, like an urban war if you go to North Korea with that. And that's, I don't see any other way of it ending. There's already been enough sanctions there where it's not going to change.
Yeah, I my heart breaks for the people of North Korea because
Mm.
because while some I imagine quite a bit realize the destitution of their country, like from the reading of Nothing to Envy, it became kind of clear that over time, little glimpses of things slowly start to show certain a few North Koreans are like, oh wait, we're being lied to. Like I think a
Mm.
good example was the I don't know, you read Nothing to Envy, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, sure, sure.
So
Some.
do you remember the zipper thing where the guy saw the protest of workers in South Korea as propaganda and
Um.
noticed that one of the people that were supposed to be super repressed
Mm.
was wearing a zipper, and zippers were rare enough in North Korea and such a luxury that they couldn't imagine that they were that poor. And that alone just like really struck me. As in like it was a zipper that showed them that South Koreans are not as poor as they are made to like the North Koreans are made to believe.
Yeah, that's really crazy to think about when you think growing up, you've had how many pairs of pants that have had a zipper. You just are probably throwing them away because you outgrow them and stuff. And just thinking that they probably haven't had any of those zippers. I mean, not saying like a zipper is going to do you any good if it doesn't have pants with it or whatnot, but that's still kind of weird to think about.
Yeah, it's just I I hope that there is some peaceful like I pray that at some point Kim Jong Un is overthrown by hopefully North Koreans, and
Mm.
at least like within the regime itself, that there is some like dissidents within the regime that want to depose Kim Jong Un
Mm.
and slowly make North Korea into like a not hermit kingdom, you know?
The only the only problem with doing that is you have to really worry about if someone worse is going to replace him. You don't really
That's also
everybody,
true.
everybody that has lived their entire life under Kim Il Sung, or not Kim Il Sung, but whoever the leader was. I guess they've probably been a couple different ones. Um, so they've lived their entire life under that. They don't even probably know of like democracy or anything like that. They're probably going to go straight back to like dictatorship if it is thrown over by North Koreans. Maybe
Yeah,
they'll have rule by the people for a couple years, but I'm not sure if that'll last.
that's one of the biggest issues with North Korea, I think, is that there have been multiple generations raised in this cult of personality that have been indoctrinated in the fact that capitalism and democracy are two horrible things that the world is suffering because of. And like convincing an entire population, like not just the old people or the young people, but everyone in between, the entire population in North Korea that haven't like reached that epiphany that some of the other people in the book have. But how do you break that?
I don't know if you can because the only way you would do it is have the teachers teach differently. But I don't. It's been a while since I've read it, but I remember there was a part in the book where it was right as Kim Il Sung died. It was either yeah, it was Kim Il Sung because it was before Kim Jong Il died. So
Hmm.
anyway, the teacher like came down the stairs to watch the TV, and they had watched how the he had died, and she was just crying and she basically became depressed that he had died, and she couldn't like teach the kids or whatnot. And you just know that everybody believes that their leaders are basically godlike, and that because she didn't think he could even die, she basically thought like he was immortal and whatnot. And that just shows you that it's going to be really hard for them to overthrow a leader like that, where they really just believe they're like the best person alive.
Yeah, I was more referencing like the military council.
Oh yeah, well
Like,
yeah,
I highly doubt that there will be a people's revolution within North
no,
Korea. That is
definitely.
that is pretty much out of the question. But what I would what I might expect if Kim Jong Un continues to like go down this path of like essentially making the entire world hate him,
Hmm.
like losing the only allies they have left, and I feel like eventually it'll get to the point where the military itself, or like the military leaders around Kim Jong Un, stop getting the same luxuries that they had before. It's only a matter of time, right? They can't
Mm.
supply that level of like comfort under these sanctions, and I could like essentially embargoes for very much for they can't. I can't imagine them lasting very much longer before that level of comfort of the military advisors falls. And you have to know that the military advisors know the condition of the rest of the world.
Oh,
They
yeah.
they have to know that like the U.S. is prospering, that South Korea is prospering, China is getting way better than it was,
Mhm.
and they have to know that, and they will see that they and I hope that they will see that Kim Jong Un is taking us down a path that will only lead to us suffering more, and then perhaps like enact a coup, and hopefully, I hope so much that if they do end up overthrowing Kim Jong Un, that they slowly start to like it's similar to how China did it, in which they slowly start like introducing economic policies and becoming uh, less isolationist over time until eventually we get to a point where we can unite the Koreas. But then that leads to another issue. Is it even possible to unite the Koreas anymore?
I don't know, but thinking about people I would replace him, I was just saying, I think L. Paul Brimmer III probably is out of a job right now. He could take over there. See after his great work in Iraq,
Yeah, yeah, you can do that.
It's be a good replacement.
Yeah, we'll just throw him in there. Throw him in there in place of Kim Jong Un.
Could have North Korean ISIS.
Yeah, yeah. My 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 favorite. I love North Korean ISISes. But what I'm saying is that I feel like there is such a cultural divide between North and South Korea at this point. 50, like 60, I think 62 years, right? Is that how many?
It's
65?
been since like
Was it
44, I think.
52? Was it 52 whenever like the hard divide
52
happened?
is the
Like the
Korean
war?
War. Yeah,
So,
yeah, I
okay,
think
so
so.
65 years. 65 years of division in which they continually grew farther and farther apart. I don't know if that's ever going to be reconcilable. I don't
Well,
because within the book, like you saw that North Koreans never quite felt at home. Like they never quite felt as if they belonged in South Korea, which is completely understandable. They I mean, they've grown up in what's essentially a backwater country without any of the development that South Korea has. The culture is starkly different.
Hey,
Near
wake up.
near opposite.
yeah, and
And
keep
uh
going, sir.
oh yeah, I am lagging. It's fine.
Right.
But those that cultural division, my ping's fine now. That cultural division has just gotten so great that I don't think that it can ever come together. As much as I want it to, I
I
just
mean,
don't know how it could.
I think it could, because in the first chapter of the book, doesn't it talk about people who've had family in South Korea that's in North Korea they've been separated? And also, I'm fairly certain almost all of South Korea wants to be reunited. I guess it'd really only be dependent on the people in North Korea, but as soon as you give people in North Korea food and luxury, I'm sure they would be willing to change. Although first you would have to have a different type of government and whatnot.
Yeah,
But
and then that goes into a whole resources thing. But if I remember, like towards the end of the book, they talked a lot about how as the younger generation of Koreans begin to like mature,
mm,
they no longer have those familial ties to North Korea. Like the older generations of Koreans probably still have family on the other side of the border.
yeah,
But the newest, like the youngest generation has none of that, has none of those ties. They don't, they are taught to go, yes, North Korea is just like they are just like us. We want to reunite with them. We want this unison, right? Like that's what
mm,
they're taught in schools. But they have no real emotional motivation behind that. Like it's not the if I remember in the book, there's a general apathy towards North Korea amongst like the younger generation. Like it's kind of like a live and let live. If we don't worry about North Korea, then it's not there.
Yeah.
And I feel like that mindset within the most like recent Korean like generation, South Korean,
So nice.
will make it really difficult for like true unity because there's no way that the cultures can mingle without massive reforms and like essentially culture shock. Like the entire North Korean population, if they're like reunited, will all 24 million people in North Korea, for the most part, will be faced with culture shock.
And that's somewhat how it was in East and West Berlin, but I guess in East and West Berlin they did not hate each other and they weren't told to hate each other. What if it was to go on for another? This is hypothetical, but if it was still East and West Berlin today, I think it would be the same situation almost as
Yeah.
North South Korea.
Well, one of the differences with East and West Germany was that the people within Germany
Oh,
revolted.
yeah.
They had the will to throw off like the Soviets. The North Koreans don't have that will. They are wholeheartedly like I don't mean to generalize, but I would imagine that a significant majority of the country is wholeheartedly behind the regime
Yeah.
and have no wishes to reunite with South Korea unless it involves military action. And go ahead.
I was just gonna say I think that's pretty fair to say as well.
And that's one of the biggest differences between the two is the people of Germany wanted to reunite and like wanted to get past these barriers. And the Soviets were a lot less cult of personality and frankly did a lot worse job keeping them apart than the North Koreans do. Like there was still like makeshift communication between the Germanys.
Yeah, and I guess it's also a little bit fair to say that Berlin was in a lot better state than North Korea is. You still had not wealth, but at least you probably had a small meal on your plate versus eating like dandelions in the garden or sawdust or other
Exactly.
sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if they're necessarily comparable in this situation, and I just
No, I meant the culture shock was going to be
yeah,
similar.
I understand that. I'm just worried that we've gotten to a critical point to where it's no longer possible for the Koreas to fully reunite without massive long-term like like unison plans.
And
Like go ahead.
I was going to say, is it even necessary for them to reunite?
I mean, not
Maybe
necessarily.
just have two separate countries, like South Carolina, North Carolina, or not North Carolina, yeah, North Carolina.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. But I feel like at least a lot of South Korea would prefer like I think a general trend amongst Koreans, from what I remember from the book, is that they want the countries to be united.
Yeah, it's true.
Like they are just not on the same page of how that government should be run and who should rule it. And what I found the biggest like wow from the book was the fact that there is now a physical difference between the Koreans. And in that, like, overall, North Koreans are shorter, smaller, as a physical trait, you can now distinguish North and South Koreans just because of the malnutrition they face.
Yeah, and that's pretty tragic.
That
Just
like malnutrition and just terrible governance has allowed for what it, to the same people to now look differently physically just due to like poor governance. And it's just that entire situation is just if you think about it for too much, if for too long, it just starts to get really depressing
Oh, and
because
that's because it is.
you know there's nothing the U.S. can do. There's nothing anyone can do. Our hands are tied. That you cannot go in and fix the regime.
And the even worse thing is even with like, say you donate to a charity that charity donates goods, the goods just go straight to the government, and you're
Exactly.
prolonging the government. That goes to the officials, and they either sell them off or they get another month of dictatorship without revolt.
Precisely. And like it's not as if the US can make military action towards towards North Korea because they have the backing of Russia and China. I mean, not as much China anymore, but I can assure you that China does not want a US allied or US occupied country on its border.
Definitely.
And
And
that's one of the major reasons why it's continued to prop up North Korea is as a buffer state.
yeah, I was gonna bring that up. It's just because do we have? I know we're allies with like South Korea, but we don't have any like military in South Korea, or do we? I
Oh,
feel like we
we
do.
have a lot of military
Yeah.
bases in
Okay.
South Korea.
So that's exactly why then, I guess.
I'm pretty sure my mom's friend, one of my mom's friends, her husband's stationed in South Korea right now.
Oh wow.
Like we are essentially
Probably not a good place to be stationed right now.
yeah,
Probably sucks.
the South Koreans and the Japanese are heavily influenced by the U.S. military. We are essentially the Japanese military, and the South Koreans have a military, but it is heavily supplemented by our own.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the 30-minute mark. We have a few sponsors here. Um, they so we here's a word from our sponsors if they are here and willing to give us their advertisements.
Hey, are you tired of real doors cluttering up your house where you open them and you actually go somewhere and you go into another room? Get on down to Real Fake Doors. That's us. Fill a whole room up with them. See, watch. Check this out. Won't open. Won't open. Not this one. Not this one. None of them open. FakeDoors.com is our website, so check it out for a lot of really great deals on fake doors.
That was a message from Real Fake Doors, a local company that I personally am a huge fan of. I believe we have one more sponsor.
Are you tired of the corruption in Washington? Tired of all the lies and deceit of the aggressive left? Subscribe to InfoWars and join the fight. We tackle the issues that the mainstream media is afraid of, such as the poisonous fluoride in our water. So if you want to join the good fight, come on down and subscribe to InfoWars.
Thank you. The Infowars website is incredibly informative. I learned a lot from my boy Alex Jones, especially
Huge fan.
yeah. I am a huge fan of Alex Jones, and his like shout out to the Alex Jones show. I beg you to go and give it a watch. It's riveting and eye opening, and the hard hitting piece on how fluoride is a way for Obama to make us gay. That really opened my eyes. So I would beg you to go and go check out that channel.
Also, they're selling this Brain Force Plus. I would never be able to do this podcast without it, but it's only $30 and it has 20% more capsules. I'm not sure what it does, but use promo code, and that will give you Brain Force. I'm not sure if that's good or bad, but
Yeah,
it's a promo code.
I am personally a huge fan of the Caveman True Paleo formula. It is the I'll just read it from the website. It is the ultimate in true paleo nutrition with bone broth,
Love
turmeric
eating
root,
bones.
chaga mushroom, bee pollen, and other ancient super nutrients. This is a deal. It is 11 ounces, 315 grams for you communists, and it is one-time delivery for $60, and I don't think there's a better deal.
Unless you're
it-
buying 3 of them, that would be a better deal. Go
Yeah,
on.
yeah, that would be. Some of the effects, it helps supports healthy muscles, supports healthy digestion, encourages health on a cellular level, and helps fight free radicals. You know how we have to keep those free radicals down. So yeah, I would go check out the InfoWarsStore.com. They have preparedness for whenever Obama takes our guns and plunges into Sharia law, except for Oklahoma. They have health and wellness, coffee, survival food, water filtration, and specials too. And just stop by the Infowars.com store and give it a look. I am a huge fan personally, and I swear by some of his products. Now back to the podcast. I feel like we should get into the Rwandan topic. So I recently watched Hotel Rwanda.
I didn't recently. I watched last year.
Okay, well, I'm sure you remember it.
Whatever.
It is a hard movie to forget.
True.
And it is one of those movies that genuinely, like, it morally, emotionally, and mentally wore me out just by watching it. Like, I came home from watching it for an hour and a half and, like, needed to decompress. I was, like, so on edge because of that movie. I don't know if you felt like a similar effect, Joey.
A little bit.
Yeah, so apparently, I think you're just a terrible human being.
I
Is what
mean,
we're getting out there.
I get all my news from Alex Jones. Go on.
But yeah, it really, the Rwandan genocide is just one of those things that really just make you stop and wonder how we as humans can enact such horrible things upon each other. And the different, like, I feel like for a lot of people, whenever you think of, like, the Holocaust, it is a terrible, terrible thing. Like, it's one of the worst things to have happened ever, right?
Yeah.
But you don't, like, there isn't that, like, modern connection, you know? That we don't, there are no color photographs. This happened before, like, probably any of our parents were born. Some of our grandparents, if you're young enough. And, like, that distance kind of makes the effect less powerful. Whenever you can see color video of the Rwandan genocide happening. Because it happened less than 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And crap, I got distracted. This modernity, I think that's a word.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's fine. To the situation makes it way more real. Like, knowing that, like, I mean, for example, like Sophia Kamanzi, she is the daughter of Rwandan refugees or immigrants, I forget. And
So insensitive.
And like the fact that there is like a single like not even a generation has passed since this atrocity. Really, like it is one of the most recent genocides.
I was just gonna say I can really only like compare it to like what kind of happened in like Yugoslavia with like the ethnic cleansing over there, like really close to that, but it was pretty big, and like there's other genocides since, but it's huge. But
Yeah, it's just crazy to me to think that people systematically murdered. Like, I think the number was like 1 million or 2 million people. Because they were told by colonists that there is a difference there. That there exists some fundamental ethnic difference between Hutus and Tutsis. Whenever it was essentially just made up. by looking at traits like the longness of their nose or the color of their skin, whether it was light or dark, and divided a single ethnic population into two. And they like it really speaks to human nature and the fact that like people believed that and said, "Oh yes, now that I am a Tutsi, I am better than these people." And like that created such a harsh division that it eventually led to the systematic killing of nearly 1 million people over nothing more than like some white people came in and told them that they were different.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, was it Belgium or France?
It was Belgium.
Belgium. Okay.
Yeah.
Can't remember.
Yeah, the Belgians, if I understand history correctly, they essentially just screwed up everywhere in Africa that they put their hands on. And I'm pretty sure they I think they had colonized the Congo. And
that's a good place right now.
And that it's a good place right now because of the Belgians.
Yep.
And I say good place in the loosest of terms, and by good place,
I think you actually like genocide, Carson.
I mean bad place. It is a very bad place. Don't go.
Whatever. I know you like genocide.
Don't go to either of the Congos. They're not good.
But it's a democratic republic of it. It's got to be good.
But what about just the Congo?
Well, that one's probably worse because it's not democratic.
You're right. It's not a democratic or a republic.
And
yeah,
that's
you're right.
Both of the. I mean, look at North Korea. They're Democratic People's Republic of North Korea. Look how good they are right now. Pretty good.
Yeah. I just like that was such an eye-opening experience learning. Like I knew of the Rwandan genocide before like I learned about it. Like you've heard it. You've heard it mentioned in passing. But you never I never like I guess never put the research into it. And now that like I realize that the world watched as 1 million people died in cold blood.
I was just gonna say something kind of similar is like the Armenian genocide and like how Turkey constantly denies it. I mean, it's a really bad thing when you're trying to hide a genocide, especially of what happened in Rwanda, because then it just makes it very easy for something similar to happen again.
Exactly. We need to have that historical reference. Like otherwise it will happen again. If we do not learn from our mistakes, history is doomed to repeat itself.
Yeah.
And like I cannot stand the fact that we allowed Turkey to deny the Armenian genocide. I can't stand the fact that we allowed Japan to deny the rape of Nanjing and all of the atrocities they committed. Like as much as I like, and call me a weeb, but like I feel like I find the culture of Japan like pretty neat, and I'd like to go there sometime.
You are a weeb.
Yeah. So
talk to Josh Mackler.
Yeah, I'll talk to him about that. But I just cannot get behind denying atrocities. I mean, we do it in the U.S. too. Like we don't necessarily deny it.
Just kind of glanced over.
But we don't like. Yeah, we don't spend time on the fact that we kind of had concentration camps.
Oh yeah.
And at the same time, Germany did, but theirs were just worse,
deadlier.
Yeah, like we had concentration camps. We committed a genocide in the U.S., but it's just glanced over because it's not something you want to talk about whenever you like to support. I mean, I have nothing against like patriotism. Like I love the U.S. Love living
whatever,
here.
Commie.
But I feel like in our attempt to make it to where we only like I feel like a lot of history curriculums only make it to where you learn the good things about the US.
Yeah,
Whenever the US has committed just as many atrocities as pretty much any other country.
I kind of wonder like what the textbooks are going to be in like 10 years if it's going to include all the stuff at like Guantanamo Bay, and if that's still going on, or if it's going to be a huge issue or not. Because I mean, I can only imagine like there's probably I don't think we've done anything worse since like the 40s, or besides like civil rights movement and all that, other than like torturing people in
Yeah.
off island location and whatnot. But I
I
don't know.
just on a lot of issues, I just like to ask myself like what side of history are you going to be on? Like just like try to project ahead.
The right side, or
Well,
maybe the left.
that's what, okay. Well, like I just try to project ahead and like imagine that okay, let's say in 10 years from now, whenever history books are written over like for example the LGBT movement, right?
Yeah.
Like what side of that do you want to be on? Like I feel like the right side of that was the ones that were like pro marriage rights, right? Like
Well, I guess you kind of have to say that because like they already had their rights given to them
yeah,
for the large part.
like
I think.
looking for people that that will be growing up in the 2020s and learning about the history of the US in the early 2000s. They will look at this at like the LGBT rights movement, and there will be good guys and bad guys, just like we look at the civil rights movement and look at all the racists that were there and say, oh, these guys are the bad guys. When if we were in their positions and indoctrinated in the ways that they were, we probably wouldn't have two different views.
And I think that's like a massive part of what everybody's been talking about. Like why a lot of people hate Trump supporters is because they believe they're on the wrong side of history according to their like beliefs and whatnot. Saying like this election was just hugely like just divided really. Just,
Polarizing.
yeah, polarizing. So
Yeah, our entire political process has kind of devolved into. I mean, it's been devolving for a very long time now, but it has only gotten worse with how polarized and hate-filled the two sides are. Like an important thing that people need to remind themselves is, like I'm pretty sure LaForce said this, is we all like America. Like we are all speaking for the most part. Like I don't mean to talk for everyone. Some people may
for
hate
all those
America.
Bernie supporters hate America, am
Yeah,
I right?
yeah, clearly. But we're all like both sides are just going from the perspective of trying to make America better than it was. Like we are all trying, regardless of your political stances. You all like we for all for the most part want America to become better. Like we
Make
want the
America
best
great
for
again.
the country. And I was trying to steer away from that, but you said it. You just said it. But it's that I think a lot of people get into their heads that if you're for liberals, if you're a conservative, you hate the country and you just want to see it devolve into some backwater nation. And for conservatives, they believe that liberals are the dumb libtards that just want communism and everyone to use the same bathroom. And that I feel like both sides have begun to paint a picture of the fact that they don't want the best for the US. But from everyone's point of view, for the most part, they just want the good, like the best for the US. You know?
Yeah, and that's why I hate like two parties is there's no middle, the two-party system. You'd at least in a third party you'd assume, but like I don't know, like there's this
There's no
like
intermediate.
yeah, like I didn't really like in last election, like if you Hillary was obviously the far well, I don't even know. Bernie was
Hillary
probably the
was,
far left.
yeah, Hillary was, if not center right.
Yeah, she was the more center of the left side. I would probably say in the later stages of the Republican side with Kasich and Trump, obviously Kasich was more in the middle, and Trump was as far to the right. So basically, I don't know. I think it would just be better if the middle had a chance, because once it like the far right side of it goes, it's just everybody doesn't really care about what they're voting for. They're just voting for their party because they're too patriotic to. And whenever they get too patriotic, maybe they're also being patriotic about their voting party, regardless
Yeah.
of what it's saying.
I feel like it's really gotten into a team. We treat politics similar to we treat sports.
Yeah.
Like we've developed this team mentality that my team, I want my team to win, and I want the other team to lose.
To be fair, my team is better, so.
Yeah, I mean, of course. But it's that mentality throughout the American public that's caused a lot of the issues we're facing now.
Mm-hmm.
And that I don't know. I feel like we should end with a lighter topic because we've just we've just been hitting on really heavy stuff.
Yeah, it's like a.
What kind of light topics do we have?
I think North Koreans are pretty light, except for Kim Jong Un. But
oh my gosh. What do we got? Joey, come up with a topic, a light one, so we can.
all right,
end it
I'm
off.
gonna Google Fox News and
Oh my gosh.
look up uplifting news on there.
Okay.
All right, back in the political spotlight, Clinton launches onward toward PAC, calls on members to resist. That seems pretty uplifting. All right, SNL fat shames Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Oh my gosh.
Alright, maybe I won't find stuff on here. Let's try Infowars.
Okay, yeah. Let's look at the Infowars news. We can talk about that to
Alright.
finish this out.
Alright. Hillary emerges from woods, launches Resist Trump Dark Money organization. Communists lead illegal alien march in Texas. Let's do this one.
Link me that.
Yeah,
So,
I'm gonna. Alright, here we go.
communists lead
Hey, wake up.
Illegal alien
march in Texas.
Now, there's a lot of aliens
Wow.
that I don't like because they're pretty scary, you know, coming in their UFOs and stuff.
So, a small group of event leaders identified Infowars reporter Millie Weaver and made it their mission to stalk her the entire march, while telling the attendees not to talk to her. Oh wow! So these communists are clearly anti-Infowars.
Stalking
not
her and telling them to not talk to her. It's pretty low.
Yeah, seriously. Anti-SB4 migrant mothers march. Who do they think? Who do they think they are? Migrant mothers? Oh my gosh.
Oh,
We need to
here's one. In first U.S. man to be sentenced for transgender hate crime. Look at this one. That can only be fun. Joshua Valum. Oh,
Ooh.
he's from Mississippi. Yeah,
Wow. Imagine that. So yeah, apparently, Joey, we're gonna have an outro. I've been told by our production crew. I wasn't prepared for that one, but I'm ready for it. But before we
Oh
end.
my God, this comment. Alright, I'm not gonna say this.
Oh, I guess we're done.
Oh.
So have a good day, have a good night, or whenever you're listening to this. And this has been.
I'm listening at 9:56 p.m.
This has been episode 1 of The Ripple Effect. Thank you for listening.